Pause for a moment and listen. What I'm about to tell you might sound completely absurd, yet it's the absolute truth. Much of what you've been taught about success is fundamentally flawed. It's not intelligence, it's not luck, and it's certainly not just hard work. I discovered through painful experience that only 1% of people on this planet possess the courage to apply the genuine secret to success, which is why they command virtually all of the world's wealth. Now consider this. What if everything you've been taught about making money was a lie? What if you could entirely transform your life in the next few months? I'll get straight to the point. An idea, when nurtured and embraced, holds more power over your life than any degree, any hour of overtime, or any financial advice you've ever received. I'm not talking about a fleeting thought. I'm talking about that idea that sparks in the middle of the night, that flash of insight that makes your heart race, and which you, out of fear or laziness, bury and forget. I know this because I lived through exactly that. I remember it as if it were yesterday. I agreed to clean a hallway for $30 a month. Ridiculous, isn't it? On that day, no one could have imagined that swept floor would be the seed of a business that, little by little, lifted me out of scarcity. What changed wasn't luck. It wasn't a sudden stroke of genius. It was a simple idea I refused to let die, and the decision to act on it, even without resources, without guarantees, just with the conviction that it could be something significant. Stop and ask yourself, how many ideas have you had and let die because you deemed them too small, impractical, or not for me? How many times have you listened to the voice that says, "That won't work," and accepted that sentence as if it were law? Those voices stem from inherited beliefs, from fears planted by family, by school, by culture. They tell you that you need to wait, to save, to study more, to be ready. The truth is different. Ideas don't wait for perfect conditions. They flourish when you feed them. How do you transform an idea into a living force? First, capture it. Write it down the exact moment it appears. Do more than just think. Commit it to paper. This breaks the cycle of procrastination. Ideas that only stay in your head die at the first doubt. Next, ask the practical question. If I had to prove this idea with the least risk and the lowest cost, what would be the first step? Don't create a perfect plan. Design a minimum viable step. In my case, the minimum step wasn't a major investment. It was sweeping that hallway for $30. It was action. It was exposure. It was learning. Afterward, experiment with discipline. Establish small weekly goals that move you towards your idea. Define simple indicators. How many people will I approach this week? How many offers will I make? How many hours will I dedicate to learning how to do that better? Transform intention into routine. Routine kills indecision. Routine generates habits, and habit creates identity. When you repeat a behavior for enough time, you stop trying and start being. You become the type of person who accomplishes that. Honestly confront the fears that arise. The first is almost always shame. What will people think? I've heard that so many times. The second is financial fear. What if I lose money? And the third is existential doubt. Am I capable? Respond to each with a concrete action. For shame, share the idea with a trusted person and ask for feedback. For financial fear, create an inexpensive experiment. Test, validate, learn. For doubt about capability, break down the necessary skill into micro habits and practice one per day. Take 10 small actions that increase your competence in 30 days. Competence dissipates fear. Also consider how to adapt your idea to today's world. Not every idea needs a physical space. In the year 2025, you can transform knowledge into a digital product, hourly consulting, a subscription service, or content that attracts clients. If your idea is a local service, as cleaning was for me, think about scalable models, outsourcing, training a team, standardizing processes. If it's something knowledge-based, publish, record, offer online workshops. The internet allows for low-cost validation. Create a simple page, offer a symbolic pre-sale, observe the response. Validation is more valuable than theoretical planning. Look at the common objections people raise about money and starting something new. I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't know how. It's too risky. Transform each objection into a diagnostic question. How much time do you spend each day on activities that don't generate results? Where can you reallocate 30 minutes daily to work on your idea? How much actual money do you need for a minimum test? Often it's much less than you imagine. For I don't know how, put together a list of resources, videos, books, someone to ask. Learning is a continuous process. You don't have to be perfect to start. I want you to visualize something practical and chronological. Choose an idea today and set a deadline of 12 months to transform it into a real source of income or valuable learning. Divide these 12 months into quarterly milestones. In the first quarter, capture, research, minimum viable step, and first sale or first service delivery. In the second quarter, feedback, iteration, building presence, even if small. Simple websites, profiles, a network of contacts. In the third quarter, systematization. Begin documenting processes, training someone, automating what's possible. In the fourth quarter, evaluate results, adjust prices, focus on scalability. By the end of the year, you will have real information, and real information is worth more than hope. Now, an exercise I want you to do with me, no excuses. Grab a sheet of paper and write in one sentence the idea that holds the greatest potential to change your life in the next 12 months. Don't rationalize, don't diminish it. Put it on paper. Below that, write the smallest step you can take in the next 24 hours. And then write down 3 people you can reach out to this week to discuss it. Someone who might be a client, someone who can give honest feedback, and someone who can support you when discouragement sets in. This simple act, identifying micro-action network, is the ice broken between you and possibility. And here's something almost no one does. Document the small victories. At the end of each week, jot down what worked, even if it seems insignificant. An email sent, a call made, a positive comment. These notes will form a file that in a few months will become proof of progress. When I looked at the first checks I received for cleaning, I felt something that cannot be bought. The confirmation that the idea was alive. This confirmation is fuel. Keep it safe. Finally, accept that there will be mistakes. I made them in profusion. Each error was a clue about what needed to be adjusted. Mistakes are low cost when you test early and become expensive when you spend years on a perfect plan. Prefer speed with learning. And if you want a practical push for the next month, commit to 30 concrete actions that advance your idea, 1 for each workday. Choose a metric to track, leads, conversations, deliveries, and at the end of 30 days, take stock. If you repeat this for 12 months with discipline, the chance of transforming a simple idea into something that pays your bills and elevates you is not theory. It is a direct consequence. Do not confuse simplicity with lack of depth. A simple idea, well executed, is overwhelming. I started with a hallway and a rag. You can start with a written line, an offer sent, a conversation initiated. What separates those who prosper from those who stay stagnant is not having better ideas. It is having the courage to nurture that idea until it bears fruit. So do this. Write your idea. Define the smallest step, act now, and repeat. Let the idea live. For much of my life, I believed a lie that most people still carry, that success is the privilege of the most intelligent. I was conditioned to think that brilliant people with diplomas adorning their walls were the only ones capable of achieving great results. But this idea kept me trapped for years. I looked at myself and thought, how can I prosper if I didn't even finish school? The truth is, intelligence has nothing to do with prosperity. I knew sharp-minded people, full of titles, living in debt, and I knew others who could barely write correctly, running multi-million-dollar empires. It was in this contrast that I realized something shocking. Success is not a matter of knowledge, it is a matter of mental programming. We are not given an education that teaches us to think in abundance. On the contrary, we learn to reason in scarcity. From an early age, we hear phrases like, money doesn't grow on trees, work is suffering, being rich is for dishonest people. And without realizing it, these phrases become codes within the mind, operating silently, sabotaging decisions and shaping outcomes. I lived this way for a long time, believing I needed to deserve more intelligence before I deserved more money. But money was never about intellectual merit. It is a direct consequence of what you believe is possible. If you believe money is hard, it will be hard. If you believe you have to fight for every cent, life will give you exactly that, a constant struggle. Science has already proven that the human brain operates based on mental maps. What you believe to be true transforms into perceptual filters, meaning you perceive the world in a way compatible with your belief. If you believe success is impossible, you literally do not see the opportunities before you. They might be there, shining like lighthouses, but your mind blocks them out because they don't align with what you perceive as real. I recall the very first time I grasped this. I was utterly exhausted. I worked for hours and hours, yet my bank balance remained stubbornly unchanged. I felt stuck, as if the universe was actively conspiring to keep me trapped. Then it hit me. The issue wasn't a lack of effort, it was the kind of thinking that drove me. I used to believe that only physical labor created wealth, when in reality, wealth originates first on an unseen plane, that of consciousness. This is precisely why some individuals work less, but produce more. They aren't lazy. They've simply understood the core principle. You aren't compensated for the time you put in, but rather for the value you create, and value is born from ideas, not brute force. Observe the patterns. People who believe they are poor by destiny make decisions that reinforce this belief. They steer clear of risks, turn down opportunities, and remain fixated on fear. Conversely, those who believe they can prosper even without knowing how discover paths that seem to materialize out of thin air. The universe responds to your mental vibration, and your vibration is a direct reflection of what you think about yourself. When you think, "I can't do this," you are quite literally emitting a frequency that obstructs the flow of possibilities. For years, I sabotaged myself in this very way. I thought I needed to study more, take courses, pursue degrees, until I realized all of it was merely a disguise for the fear of taking action. I sought endless preparation to sidestep the feeling of failure. But success never comes to those who wait to feel fully prepared. It arrives for those who choose to act, even when doubt lingers. Once I grasped this, I transformed my life. I began working with what I had, leveraging what I knew, and with each step, I noticed that intelligence revealed itself in the process, not prior to it. Action awakens capability, not the other way around. Today, I clearly see how the belief in lack of intelligence shatters dreams. Extraordinary people hold back from entrepreneurship because they think they aren't good with numbers. Others give up on teaching, creating, or innovating because they believe they lack the inherent talent. But intelligence is malleable. The human brain possesses a property called neuroplasticity. It reconfigures itself based on its use. The more you challenge your mind, the more connections it forms. In other words, the more you act, the more intelligent you become. Waiting to be good enough is a perfect trap for stagnation. I observe this constantly. Individuals with incredible talents, yet ensnared by inherited thought patterns. They believe money is tainted, that getting rich is selfish, that prosperity demands betraying their values. They live in a perpetual conflict between wanting to prosper and feeling guilty for that desire. This internal conflict is what obstructs the flow. Because the universe doesn't reward contradiction, it responds to clarity. When you unite intention, faith, and consistent action, the outcome becomes almost inevitable. I often say, you don't attract what you desire, you attract what you are. And what you are is defined by what you believe is possible. If you wish to change your life, start by examining your beliefs. Take a piece of paper and jot down everything that comes to mind when you hear the word money. Write without censoring yourself. Perhaps phrases like, money causes problems, I don't know how to handle it, or people with money forget others, might surface. Now look at these phrases and ask yourself, are these absolute truths or merely ideas I've accepted without question? In most instances, they are inherited notions, not your own lived experiences. And once you realize this, you can liberate yourself from them. One of the most liberating lessons I learned is that you don't need to fight against what you've learned. You simply need to replace it. Every limiting belief is a thought repeated with emotion. If you repeat the opposite with sufficient conviction, your mind reprograms the pattern. That's why I developed the habit of reciting powerful affirmations every day. I would tell myself, money flows effortlessly to me. I am worthy of abundance. My value grows with every idea I apply. Initially, it felt foolish, but repetition is the key that unlocks the subconscious. Studies from Harvard University indicate that positive affirmations, when combined with visualization, heighten activity in the brain region associated with motivation and persistence. In other words, your brain starts to believe before the outcome manifests, and once it believes, your behavior shifts and the result follows. The mistake is in thinking that positive thinking is a denial of reality. It isn't. Positive thinking is a choice of focus. It's deciding what you wish to strengthen within yourself. Fear and doubt will continue to exist, but you don't have to nourish them. Every thought is like a seed. The more attention you give it, the more it grows. If you water fear every day, it blossoms. If you water faith, it blossoms. And the harvest always comes, whether of one or the other. I want you to grasp something right now. Success is not reserved for those born intelligent. It is reserved for those committed to thinking differently. The only intelligence required is the intelligence to believe. The universe teaches you the rest along the way. When you shift what you believe about yourself and about money, the entire world will begin to react to your new frequency. Opportunities won't appear by chance. They were already there, merely waiting for you to become the person capable of recognizing them. So look around you. Observe the life you have today. It is the precise reflection of what you believe is possible. And if you don't like what you see, that's not punishment. It's merely feedback. Feedback from the universe telling you, change your thoughts, change your frequency, and everything around you will change along with it. Because success was never about intelligence. It always has been and always will be about consciousness. I remember the exact moment I realized I wasn't living my own life. I was at the back of an auditorium, surrounded by hundreds of people. In front of me on stage, a man spoke with such confidence, such clarity. He seemed to command the very air. His name was Bill Goff. I watched him, completely mesmerized, and a voice within me said, if only I could speak like that. If I had that kind of courage, everything would be different. But soon another voice, louder, crueler, whispered, you'll never be like him. You'll expose yourself and people will laugh at you. That was my prison, the fear of being myself. That day, Bill uttered a phrase that changed everything. If you want to be free, you must be yourself. It struck my soul like lightning. It was in that instant I realized that for years I had been trying to be the person I thought others wanted me to be. I wore different masks depending on the setting, one at work, another with friends, yet another at home. I smiled when I wanted to cry, agreed when I disagreed, shrank back when I wanted to shout, all of it to please, to fit in, to be accepted. But the cost of that acceptance was my very essence. Perhaps you understand what I'm saying. Perhaps you too have silenced your dreams so as not to appear too ambitious. Perhaps you gave up on an idea because someone scoffed at it. Perhaps you live by conforming to the expectations of others, parents, partners, colleagues, to the point where you no longer even know who you are. This is far more common than one might imagine. Most people live trapped within the image the world has crafted for them. And the worst part is, they call this security. I remember the day I decided to confront this fear. I resolved that I would speak in public for the first time. I trembled. My hands sweated. My voice faltered. Fear told me, "You'll expose yourself, you'll be embarrassed." And I almost believed it, but there was another voice, quieter, firmer, saying, "Just be yourself." So I went, and it was disastrous. I stammered, lost my train of thought, looked at the floor. But when I finished, I realized something that changed everything. No one laughed at me. No one judged me. On the contrary, some people approached me and said, "What you said resonated with me." And in that moment, I understood that perfection alienates, but vulnerability connects. From that point on, I began practicing what I call progressive authenticity. Every day, I allowed myself to reveal a little more of who I truly was. I spoke my mind, even if trembling. I admitted my mistakes, even with shame. I stopped trying to impress and started expressing myself. And something magical happened. The right people began to draw closer, and the wrong ones simply faded away. Life became lighter. I discovered that fear doesn't vanish with time. It disappears with action. The more you act as your true self, the less power fear holds. This fear of being authentic is also one of the greatest financial blocks that exist. Because all prosperity stems from the expression of your true potential. If you live hiding what you feel, what you think, what you desire, you're obstructing the flow of abundance. Money is energy, and energy flows through truth. When you pretend to be something you're not, you create an invisible barrier between yourself and what you wish to attract. It's as if you're telling the universe, "Don't trust me. I don't even trust myself." And the universe responds with the same level of hesitation. I recall a time when I simply couldn't assert myself. I would participate in meetings, listen to people discuss ideas, and remain silent, even when I had something valuable to contribute. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I believed that if I opened my mouth, people would realize I wasn't as intelligent as they seemed to think. This is the kind of prison no one sees, but which consumes you from within. You begin to negate yourself little by little until you believe you have nothing left to offer. Doubt possesses this power. It doesn't kill you instantly. It erodes you gradually, and perhaps you know this feeling. That voice that says, "What if I fail? What if I'm rejected? What if it doesn't work out?" That is the soundtrack of doubt. It keeps replaying in your mind until it feels true. And even more damaging, it convinces you it's better not to try than to try and fail. I believed that for too long. How many opportunities did I let slip away because I thought it wasn't the right moment? Because I talked myself out of it, thinking I wasn't prepared. Here's the kicker. Nobody ever truly is. That sense of being ready is just a mental trick created by the mind to justify inaction. I learned this the hard way when I decided to start my first business. I was utterly clueless about cleaning, had no experience, and lacked resources. Doubts swirled around me from all sides. What if I fail? What if it goes wrong? What if I embarrass myself? Yet something more powerful stirred within me, the curiosity to find out how far I could go. And it was that curiosity that truly spurred me on. I said yes, even though I was scared, and every mistake I made chipped away at the grip doubt had on me. That's how I discovered that doubt doesn't fade with time. It withers with action. It's crucial to grasp this fundamental truth. Doubt is a fabrication of the mind. It's not a fact, it's an interpretation, and every interpretation can be replaced. Doubt arises from a lack of clear direction and a standstill. When you don't move, your brain fills that void with apprehension. But when you act, your brain fills the void with learning. That's why people who take action often seem more confident. Not because they feel less fear, but because they've learned to use movement as their weapon against uncertainty. There was a phrase I heard from one of my mentors, Earl Nightingale, that imprinted itself on my mind. Most people underrate their own capabilities and assume others are inherently more capable. When I first heard that, I thought, he's right, but he's not talking about me. I brushed it off, thinking it didn't apply to me. Until I realized I was exactly like that, constantly convinced that others possessed more intelligence, better preparation, and greater worthiness. And it was on that day that I understood the true shackles that bound me. It wasn't failure. It was the belief that I wasn't enough. This particular belief stands as one of the most crippling because it cleverly disguises itself as humility. You start to convince yourself that keeping your aspirations modest is a mark of modesty. But that's not humility, it's self-sabotage. Humility is recognizing what you need to learn. Self-sabotage is denying what you're already capable of doing. The distinction is vast. When you believe you are small, the universe only presents you with experiences that mirror that perception. The mind functions like a mirror. It doesn't reflect your desires, but your deepest convictions. Take a moment to consider how many decisions you've postponed because of doubt. How many ventures, connections, or fresh starts did you sabotage before even taking the first step? How many times have you told yourself it wasn't the right time yet, that you needed more time, more funds, more certainty? That's the whisper of doubt. It always talks about the future. One day, later, when I can, and all the while, life is slipping by. And you keep waiting for a sign that will never come because you are the very signal you're waiting for. Doubt is a habit, and like any habit, it can be consciously rewired. It thrives on idleness, but withers with action. When you act, even with fear, a shift occurs deep inside. Every small victory, every step taken, every result achieved becomes undeniable evidence that you are capable. That's how you redefine who you are. You transition from someone who merely tries to someone who does. And the more you do, the less room doubt finds to grow. That's why I often suggest a straightforward yet incredibly potent challenge. Over the coming 7 days, choose one thing that instills fear in you and execute it, fear and all. It can be something small, sending that overdue message, pitching for an opportunity, recording a video, initiating a project, articulating your true thoughts. Do it, even if your hands are shaking, because that's how you begin to dismantle doubt's hold. On the first day, fear will likely feel overwhelming. On the second, it will nag at you. On the third, it will begin to wane. By the 7th, you'll look back and realize it was never as formidable as it initially appeared. With each step you take in defiance of doubt, you're broadcasting an unmistakable signal to the universe. I trust myself. And the universe reciprocates with momentum. Things start to flow, new connections surface, pathways open up. It's not coincidence, it's a matter of vibrational alignment. When you alter your mental frequency, thereby transforming the nature of experiences you draw into your life. Remember this, doubt isn't faith's antithesis, it's simply its void. And faith isn't fearlessness in belief, it's courage in action. When doubt appears, face it head on and declare, "You no longer dictate my path," because doubt only triumphs when you yield to its commands. The moment you act is the moment you reclaim your agency. And it is in that instant that your life truly begins to transform. I discovered this when I committed to taking that initial leap of faith, devoid of any guarantees, when I embraced the possibility of errors, stumbles, and the necessity to persevere. That's how my confidence grew, not because the journey eased, but because I myself became more resilient. Doubt serves as the crucible, distinguishing dreamers from doers. And every time you choose to act, even when certainty eludes you, you send a clear signal to the universe. I am ready. And the universe consistently responds to those bold enough to make a choice. What you just heard isn't merely food for thought. It's a potent affirmation that doubt is not a cue to halt, but an urgent summons to move. Your greatest impediment was never external. It always resided within your own psyche. And the moment you decide to move forward, even without guarantees, is the moment you begin to fundamentally reshape your lived experience. Remember this: true courage isn't the absence of trepidation. It's the resolute choice to forge ahead, regardless. Now, what comes next will guide you further down this path. The upcoming video displayed on your screen represents the next tier in your personal growth, a vital stride toward becoming just 1% more improved than your current self, more cognizant, more assured, and more intimately aligned with your authentic strength. My gratitude for joining me thus far. Head over to the next video immediately, where I await you and where clarity will deepen further.